I think just before I start, I just want to say a few words just about care. It's going to be related to what I'm talking about today. A significant aspect of our practice in Zen is to awaken, to become a Buddha, to wake up, to become an awakened one, to not become, but to manifest our awakened nature as it is. Every aspect of our life, every opportunity we have is an opportunity to manifest our awakened nature. Or it's an opportunity for us to sleepwalk, I guess one could say. To just go through the motions of the task at hand without ever being present, or without being fully present, I guess we could say. In the Zen form and in the way that we engage in our practice here at Zenwest, the form, every aspect of every day is an opportunity for us to awaken. There's no small things. There's no insignificant tasks. There's no part that we can just sort of phone in. We might be in a hurry. We might be behind. But our task is to really apply ourselves to what we're doing so that we can engage in it fully. When we're doing something simple like preparing napkins as the shoji, getting ready to serve the tea, we should be careful with how we're cutting so that things are straight and neat. We should apply ourselves to this task as we are preparing a place of practice for bodhisattvas. The task is not so much to get napkins out, but to manifest our true nature in the task of preparing. Whether we're cleaning the bathroom, mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, preparing the food, it's really easy for us to slip into a mindset of doing the job. Eshu or the Ino or my supervising officer told me to do this, this, and this. And while it's true, those are the tasks that we are engaged in, as Zen practitioners, our primary task, our primary function, our primary practice is to awaken. And so if we find ourselves slipping into the get-her-done mindset, we've fallen asleep. The question isn't whether we wash the toilet, wash the floor, wash the mirror. The question is, have we unified with this bathroom so that it becomes clean? Is it clean? This practice or this activity or this habit, I guess we have, of setting up a framework and shutting our brains off, shutting off our engagement with our lives. This is the primary habit that we have, that we're looking at in Zen practice, and that we're using our practice to flip upside down so that when we're engaged with our tasks, we're awake, we're present, we're there. And in Zen practice, we start and we do all of these little life tasks: sweeping floors, washing bathrooms, raking the yard, mowing the lawn, chopping the wood. But if we're just going to clean the bathroom and wash the floor and do the dishes and rake the lawn, if we're just going to do those as jobs, stay home. You can wash your own floor and you can do your own dishes and you can rake your own lawn. And if you're going to stay asleep, just stay at home. But if what we want to do is to practice awakening, then this is a great place to do it. Because when we come and engage in this, we engage in these activities as the full breadth and depth of our life. If we're looking at tasks as the next obstacle that we have before we get on with our life as we want to do it or as we like it, we're actually killing ourselves. We're ending our lives in this moment for some life we're going to have later. The bathroom in front of us, the kitchen in front of us, the yard in front of us, even the month-end financial balancing in front of us. This is the complete content of our life, and our practice is to pour ourselves fully into it. No small things. At Zenwest, I try to be as clear as possible about the guidelines and about the expectations and things like that in the Zendo and with the form. Things like when we come to a Sunday Zendo, we have a certain attire that we wear. We have certain guidelines that govern us as we practice in the Zendo. Things like not wearing watches, no jewelry whatsoever, including Buddhist jewelry. The only concession I've ever made for jewelry is a wedding band, just because I don't want the fight. But I don't even wear wedding bands myself. The practice of entering the Zendo is one of letting go of our separate personal selves, even for just a few hours on a Sunday. And I try to be as clear as possible, but sometimes we forget, and that's okay. And sometimes we think, oh, it's not a big deal, or oh, no one will notice. And this is where I concern myself, because again, it's this idea of, oh, it's not important. And the truth is, as a form, it's not important. It really isn't. Whether we wear polka-dotted tank tops or whether we wear black gis, the form, whatever the form is not so important. What's important in our practice is that we commit to meeting it, commit to fulfilling it, commit to engaging with that form wholeheartedly, fully pouring ourselves out into the form, without reservation, without exception, and without any kind of justifications or excuses required, just completely letting go into it. Again, this, when I look at it, again, this is arises, or problems or challenges with this arise when we sort of turn off our brains, our thinking Bodhisattva mind. We want to apply ourselves to form. We want to fulfill the tasks that are engaged, or that we're engaged in, or that we're asked to complete. But our practice has to go much further, much beyond that, so that we're not just robots doing what we've been programmed or asked to do, but that we're living, engaged bodhisattvas, Buddhas, engaged in an activity with awakening, fully aware of what it is that's going on, fully aware of how the section of garden that we're working on is developing, fully aware of the kitchen stores, the meal that we're preparing, the food that we have in our cupboards. This sort of segues into what I wanted to talk about. A member asked some questions or brought up some concerns about some material that's in one of our chants. And I actually added some more concerns from another chant that I wanted to talk about. And I think that the concerns are an area of frequent misunderstanding. Every time we chant past them, I always get a little sort of tickle and think, this is something that would be best sort of discussed and talked about, drawn out a little bit. And so in the conversation with this member, I suggested maybe I could give a talk about it. So if you like, you can actually pull out your chant books and turn to page 22. I'm just going to read the whole thing. Torei, Zenji's Bodhisattva's vow. When I, a student of Dharma, look at the real form of the universe, all is the never-failing manifestation of the mysterious truth of Tathagata. In any event, in any moment, and in any place, none can be other than the marvelous revelation of its glorious light. With this realization, our virtuous Zen ancestors extended tender care with a compassionate heart, even to such beings as beasts and birds. Among us, in our own daily lives, who is not reverently grateful for the protections of life, food, drink, and clothing? It is clear that these protections are nothing less than the warm flesh and blood, the merciful incarnation of Buddha. Realizing this, who cannot be respectful of all senseless things, not to speak of a human being? Therefore, even if someone names us as a sworn enemy and persecutes us, we should be warm and compassionate towards them. Their very abuse conveys the Buddha's boundless loving kindness for us. It must be seen as a compassionate device to liberate us entirely from our own egoistic delusions and attachments we have built up from the beginningless past. With an open-hearted response to even the most cruel and foolish people, a most profound and pure faith arises. Then, in each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower, and on each flower a Buddha will be revealed. Everywhere is the glory of the Pure Land. In every moment may we extend this mind over the whole universe, so that we and all beings together may attain maturity in Buddha's wisdom. This Torei Zenji's Bodhisattva's vow is something that I wasn't introduced to really until I started practicing at Choboji with Genjo Osho. Torei Zenji is a descendant of Hakuin Ikaku. He's 2 or 3 generations after him. And there's a wonderful text from Torei that you can read. The part of concern is this: therefore, even if someone names us as a sworn enemy and persecutes us, we should be warm and compassionate towards them. Their very abuse conveys the Buddha's boundless loving kindness for us. It must be seen as a compassionate device to liberate us entirely from our own egoistic delusions and attachments we have built up from the beginningless past. I think this is the area of great concern, because as it's read, we might be able to see this as a justification for a woman who's being abused, or a child who's being abused by a parent, to just put up with it and stay there. This, and to sort of justify it in a really sort of religious kind of way, like, this is the Buddha's boundless loving kindness, smack. And I think it's really important to talk about this, because I personally don't feel that this is what this section of text is pointing to at all. That there should be some kind of inaction, that we should look at bad things that are happening to ourselves and others and just sort of sit there and take it. I think that this is a really common misinterpretation of Buddhist text and teaching. What I think is important in this text, in this particular section, is that all of us have experienced to a greater or lesser degree what is being expressed here. Someone names us as a sworn enemy and persecutes us. Someone doesn't like us. Someone bullies us or picks on us or decides that we're the bad guy and makes an enemy out of us. I think everybody's experienced this. We're not liked by some person or some group of people. Even an organization can sort of lean against us. So the question becomes, when we experience this, what is the usual human response to experiencing this? Where does the motivation for somebody to pick you out and make you an enemy come from? Buddhism teaches us that this habit or this behavior comes from this very fundamental mistake right at the very origin of consciousness, which is to take things as being fundamentally separate, apart, different. To really heavily invest in this idea of you and me and subject and object. We invest in that to the point where we start to believe that there's some way that I can benefit at your expense. That somehow my perspective and opinion is somehow superior, more important, and more true than your perspective. And at least for me, the tendency or the habit that happens when I'm met with this, when somebody pushes at me, someone swings at me, or someone just makes an enemy out of me, is to respond in kind. Well, if I'm your enemy, you're my enemy. And out of this place, we respond and react and retaliate. And according to the teachings that we practice here, this is the origin, this is the very source of war. We have two people standing in opposite positions, both fully invested in their positions and their perspectives and their subjective opinions, both completely convinced that they're right, that they are correct. And yet, if we take a step back from the circumstance, or if we are separate from this conflict between these two parties, we can see that it's really two people making the same mistake, investing in the same delusion and pressing in on each other. We see this all over the world. In fact, really, in almost any conflict that there is in the world, this is the situation that's going on. So when Torei says, even if someone names us as a sworn enemy and persecutes us, we should be warm and compassionate towards them. So the first step or the first point that Torei is trying to get across to us or express to us as practitioners, this is my opinion, is that the first thing that we have to commit to as bodhisattvas is to not chomp on that hook, to not fall into that hole and make that mistake. When we're dealing with somebody who's made us into an enemy, who has objectified us, our first practice is not to make the same mistake, not to make ourselves just like this person who has grasped on to delusion. When a person says, "Oh, you're different, you're bad, you're stupid and evil and lazy and just everything that's wrong with this world," our temptation is to say, "No, you are." And this Bodhisattva's vow says, the first thing that we have to pay attention to is to hold the space. We are one, not separate, fundamentally arising from a single origin. We may look different. We may come from different places. We may have different perspectives. But in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end, we are one. And if we can hold this space, everything that comes afterwards is very different. This concept of their very abuse conveys the Buddha's boundless loving kindness for us. It must be seen as a compassionate device to liberate us entirely from our own egoistic delusions and attachments we have built up from the beginningless past. This is a bit, takes some real teasing out because it's a very similar perspective or approach is taken up by Shantideva in the way of the Bodhisattva, which is that as human beings, as I'm always saying, we have this infinite potential. We have a potential for absolute selfishness. We have a potential to engage and indeed sort of perpetrate genocide, murder, rape, molestation of children. We have all of this within each of us as a human being. And we have the potential for limitless compassion, kindness, love, benevolence. But just like a great farmer's field filled with seeds of all kinds, this is like our nature. So what does it take for a seed to ripen? Well, just like when you've got a child, or you've got a child or a young puppy or something like this, how do you teach this? What is it that allows us to develop forbearance, patience? What is it that allows us to develop compassion or empathy or kindness? If we never have to wait for anything in our lives, if as soon as we want something, poof, it appears in front of us, does patience ever manifest? I think we all know maybe children who have grown up in such a way where they just get whatever they want when they want it. So when becoming a teenager or an adult, they find that they're not getting what they want when they want it, Do they have patience? Do they have forbearance? Are they able to accept and understand that? Well, for the most part, in my experience, the answer is definitively not. They behave like children. More now! So when we're able to maintain this position that I was talking about in the first part of this, when we're able to hold on to the center, when we're able to uphold this perspective of unification, one true nature in the midst of conflict, someone coming after us, someone harming us or abusing us, we're not going to respond out of anger. We're not going to respond out of selfishness. We're going to be coming from a place of unification. What this second part is talking about is that we have to develop a sense of appreciation for this opportunity. We don't have to like it. It doesn't say anything about, you really have to enjoy being harmed or being threatened or being violated. And even, from my perspective, it's not a matter of you have to be happy about this opportunity that's presented itself. And sometimes I think even when it's happening, there's no way that you can really appreciate the opportunity. But I think that when you maintain this position of compassion, this warm and compassionate response, it allows you to function through the circumstance, the difficulty. And I think that as the crisis or the circumstance passes, if we're able to maintain our spaciousness, our compassion, our warmth through the conflict as we move through it, truly we do come to see, especially if we're able to respond from this place, I could never have done that before. What a wonderful thing this has given me an opportunity to do. Sometimes it's not even you that sees it first, but other people will come and say, I can't believe that you were able to respond that way. The opportunity to slip into the me-you subject-object conflict was so great, I never could have made the jump to stay rooted in wisdom, in compassion. Now, what's, I think, really important here, to liberate us entirely from our own egoistic delusions and attachments we have built up from the beginningless past. One of the things that I notice about this practice is that each time we meet with something that's challenging, that requires patience, that requires compassion, that requires wisdom and steadfastness and courage, each time it's a battle. Each time the small self, the I am self, wants to assert itself and wants to make an enemy of that other person. There's different ways that we can understand that, whether that's our upbringing and our personal conditioning. One way of understanding it is that this is our karmic burden that we've generated or has been generated and manifested in this life as it is. But each time that we are able to hold the center, each time that we're able to function from this space of compassion, it's like it generates heat that burns off this old fixation, this old attachment, this old ego each time that wisdom and that compassion, that light expands, each time the fetters and chains and bonds that shackle us to the self loosen and drop away little bit by little bit. I think it's important to say that in order to engage in this practice, you don't have to go looking for this stuff. In fact, I might even go so far as to say, don't go looking for this stuff. Don't try to insert yourself into the process of your practice. Life will present you with many challenges, and our practice, our challenge, is just to maintain this space. As we go through these experiences, holding fast to wisdom, the wisdom that arises within and around and of each of us, our original nature, if you like, our true nature. Burning it off. Now, the next part, I think, is really important because it's also, I'm not sure if it's connected with the culture that we live in. I suspect it may be. That we have in our culture such a strong image, presence of Christ Jesus. You know, as much as many people say we live in a secular culture and all this kind of stuff, as a person practicing in a tradition other than Christianity, when I look around, you see that, you know, the very underpinnings of our culture are all rooted in Judeo-Christian and particularly Christian mindset. Everything from the calendar that we use to mark time, the holidays that we break up that calendar with, time itself, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, everything has God and Jesus present. And so I think very strongly rooted in the psyche of the white Western person is this idea of the moral goodness of suffering. We see the image of Jesus nailed to the cross, and we think, what a great guy he was. It's very strange. And I actually, in my own personal opinion, I really think that this is even a mistaken interpretation of Christian tradition. But I'm not a Christian priest, so I won't go too much into that. But certainly, I think that it's very easy for us to slip into what I consider a really kind of perverse state of mind in which we could read this and think, you know, if we're in a difficult situation, if we're being beaten or sexually abused or mishandled and mistreated by our employer or any kind of circumstance like this, we could look at this and think, you know, what this is telling me is that this is really great practice and I should stay there. And I think that this is one of a really common mistake, and it's really easy to slip into. The idea for us isn't to stay in a difficult circumstance and just take it and take it and take it and say, you know, the only problem with this situation is my perspective of it. And if I could just maintain this open and compassionate perspective, then, you know, certainly the situation is going to change because my perspective of it will change and it will become, you know, all good and light. But I think that this next line for me is really important. It says, with an open-hearted response to even the most cruel and foolish people, a most profound and pure faith arises. And this open-hearted response is crucial because it says that you respond. You respond not out of the place of fear and not out of the place of anger and not out of the place of upholding the self, but you respond out of this warmth and out of this compassion and out of a place of courage, wisdom, intelligence. All of these aspects awaken, and there is a response. And this comes back to what I was talking about before with just the simple things. With each activity that we engage in, I've said, we have this opportunity to respond in a very fixed, habitual way, or we have an opportunity to sink into the circumstance with all of our senses, with all of our faculties, with all of our resources, and wake up, look around, see all of the variables that are going on, feel all of the variables that are going on, use the incredible capacity of what it is to be a human being, and respond, awake. What this looks like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you that, in this circumstance, this is what you should do. And in that circumstance, this is what you should do. It's just like when I say, clean the bathroom. It's like I can break down, do, this, and this. But you're in it. You're in the bathroom. You're in the bad marriage. You're in the house that's broken. You're in the job. You have the senses, you have the faculties, you have the emotions. And our practice is to sink in and awaken. Make a compassionate response. Compassion. This is not niceness. This is not even kindness. It's not even empathy. It is to completely recognize yourself and the circumstance as one, without separation, to not invest in this duality. This is the way that I look at compassion. Not investing in the subject-object structure. And out of this compassionate position, we respond. What will that look like? Standing up and leaving, making a plan, reporting it to the authorities, using all of the faculties that you have to make a compassionate response. An open-hearted response to even the most cruel and foolish people. Can you respond in the face of a cruel and foolish person? Someone who is completely invested. This is the definition of a fool in Buddhism, is somebody who's totally convinced in the reality of the subject-object construct. And it's not a person out there. Again, remember, this is something that we are also fools when we invest in the subject-object construct. I do it every day. There's moments, hours, opportunities to invest in the subject-object construct, and I'm an idiot when I do it. And there are moments when I let it go and I'm able to manifest as a bodhisattva. You are too. But the response is what's important, I think, here. whether we're in a difficult situation at work, whether we're being abused in our home, whether we're being set upon in the street. Buddhism doesn't tell us to just take it, just lay down and say, oh, this is the wondrous compassion of the Buddha that I'm experiencing right now. What a wonderful opportunity. No. How do we find this warmth and compassion and respond? Respond from this state of balance. Respond from this state of even grace. When we look at characters in our world history that manifest this compassion, even taking one like Jesus Christ that is so, I think, abused into this sort of lay down and take it. If we look at the way that he lived the end of his life, we find that he was not a person who actually just laid down and took it in some kind of passive way. He was engaged to the end, speaking out to the end, defying in spite of the abuse that he was experiencing. In fact, if anything, his refusal to become jaded, to invest in the subject-object construct right to the end, was a powerful teaching. If we look at Gandhi, he didn't just get driven over or mowed over by men on horses. He stood up and acted in the face of it and refused to use the mechanism, refused to invest in the subject-object construct. Over and over again, we can see this in people we call pacifists, martyrs. It's not just sitting there and taking it. Now, the last thing is, I think, really something that's really crucial and undervalued in our practice. And this is that most of us approach this practice with an attitude, I would say most of us. Maybe there's a few people that don't, but there's not so many. Most of us approach this kind of practice, when it's described like this, as something we just can't do. I couldn't be so peaceful. I couldn't face such difficulty. I wouldn't be able to handle it. And we go through our lives constantly with this kind of mantra in our heads of like, I'm not good enough for that, or I'm not up to that, or I couldn't possibly, or I don't deserve. And one of the things that Zenji used to always say to his disciples is, what is it that you lack? It's only faith in yourself. This is how we use the term faith in Buddhism. It's not faith in the absence of evidence, but it is this increasing trust and confidence in what has been proven or demonstrated. So we go into difficult situations with the idea that we cannot survive them, that we cannot hold a compassionate heart through difficulty. We cannot be patient with people. We cannot respond to somebody who has taken us as a sworn enemy from a position of balance and compassion and even fairness. We can't do it. But what we find is when we begin practice, when we truly engage in these small things, setting out cups just so, cleaning bathrooms and mowing lawns and washing dishes, we find that there are moments where we're able to manifest with this warm and compassionate heart. We find that there are moments where we are able to respond open-heartedly to the circumstances that we are experiencing. Sometimes we're really surprised by it. But that experience is the birth of what we call faith in Buddhism. We see that what it is that I'm talking about all the time, our true nature, Buddha nature, infinite potential and capacity, is just an idea. But as we begin to expand, as we begin to experience our own capacity, our own nature, in the midst of, at first, very simple circumstances, but as we go forward, more and more complex circumstances, we find that we're able to manifest wholeheartedly. We're able to manifest with wisdom. We're able to manifest with compassion and patience. We begin to have trust, confidence. We begin to open up to the possibility that that statement about our infinite potential, our limitless Buddha nature, which seems a good idea or a nice thought, maybe there's something to that. We begin to develop this curiosity or this aspiration to say, how far does that go? How ripe can this capacity become? How deep can this rootedness, this stability, this unification go? And this is an important transition in our practice when we move from just kind of thinking it's a good idea or agreeing with the concept or thinking, oh, that's a really sound philosophy, to a much more personal, deep, experiential basis of our practice. And for me, this is what Torei is talking about here when he says, a most profound and pure faith arises. We're not operating in the realm of ideas anymore. We've just witnessed a miracle, a complete miracle. And it's not out there. The miracle is ourselves, our own function, our own ability to respond to something in a way which doesn't just invest and affirm the subject-object construct. It creates a possibility, a felt, experienced possibility which is beyond our experience up until this point in our lives. In each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower, and on each flower a Buddha will be revealed. All it takes is the first taste of this. I think for a long time in our lives we experience practice as this really wonderful philosophy and great opportunity, and I really want to apply myself to it, and I aspire to that kind of awakening, but deep down inside, we really don't believe it's possible for us. It's like fairy tales or something like this. But through this simple practice of applying ourselves to small things and gradually bigger things, becoming more and more awake and aware and alert in the context of our lives, these little openings, these little opportunities open up. Sesshin is a more challenging opportunity. We have to sort of dig deeper. But when these opportunities arise, that's just Sesshin, I should say, is a really sort of contrived crisis. We make it up just to cause ourselves a crisis, just so that we can put ourselves in it, just so that we can apply ourselves to making this warm and compassionate response. But it's certainly not the only place where this comes up. Any crisis, any difficulty, any opposition, any abuse creates this opportunity. And one time, just once, when we're able to hold the space and respond from that space with wisdom and compassion. As Muman says, a single spark and the holy candle is lit. What's possible? In each moment's flash of our thought, Torei says, there will grow a lotus flower. If you look at images of the Buddha, in many, many of them, the Buddha is seated or standing on this lotus flower. The lotus flower itself is a symbol of the Dharma teaching. And even if we look into the symbol of the lotus, it's something that grows in the muck at the bottom of a swamp. And out of that muck rises this stem through the water and even goes above the water into the clear air before it blossoms. And this is the metaphor for our practice, that we are constantly immersed in difficulty, in struggle, in complexity, in personality, in anger and violation and abuse. And our practice is to meet it. We don't have to like it. We don't have to enjoy it. We don't even have to want it or look for it. But our practice is to meet it without losing this fundamental perspective, and meeting whatever circumstances we find, whether we find them comfortable and happy, or whether we find them horrible and upsetting. To meet them in this same space without affirming the subject-object construct. And out of this space, responding with a warm and compassionate heart, open-hearted. When we grasp this, when we've experienced this, then each opportunity, each interaction, each circumstance, each task isn't just a task, isn't just something to do. It's almost like a test, not a test, a challenge, an opportunity, an unfolding. Coming from a theater background, it's like a curtain opens in this circumstance, and you are offered the opportunity to demonstrate. This is why this phrase is so often said in Rinzai Zen: demonstrate. An opportunity to manifest your true nature. In each moment's flash of our thought there will grow a lotus flower, and on each flower a Buddha will be revealed. So who is the Buddha that is revealed in each moment's flash of our thought, in each circumstance that arises in our lives? There is only one Buddha to be revealed. It's your own nature. It's not a Buddha that's outside. It's not some imagined thing. It is the embodied, manifested wisdom that is already yours, that is already present. This practice is just to awaken to it. Everywhere is the glory of the Pure Land. We don't have to wait. We don't have to go to the east. Each circumstance, each situation is this Pure Land, this opportunity for continuous awakening. In every moment may we extend this mind over the whole universe so that we and all beings together may attain maturity in Buddha's wisdom. Torei Zenji's vow, when we look at it, I think it's really important to look for what it is that Torei Zenji is pointing to as a vow. And I think if we're looking at this, we have to really say, this mind, may we extend this mind. This mind that meets and manifests and demonstrates and responds open-heartedly with wisdom, warmth, and compassion.